Okay, good. Okay, Dr. Diab. Is it Dr. Diab or Diab?
Diab, actually.
Diab, okay. I'm going to bring up one thing here real quick while I have you. One second. Here we go. Okay. First of all, you were at St. Vincent Charity, correct?
Yep.
How many years have you been there?
8 years.
Fantastic. And why did you choose St. Vincent?
I'm an emergency physician.
Fantastic. My son is going to graduate from med school in April, and he's looking at being a surgeon. He was a paramedic in an ER for Cleveland Clinic for about 6 or 7 years while he's going to med school. So now he's looking to be a surgeon. He's looking at residency somewhere in Dallas, he thinks.
Oh, that's nice.
So you're emergency room physician, correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. So I like to look at two different things here. When COVID first hit and when it hit again. Those I like to look at those two particular scenarios. So when COVID first hit, how was your work activities impacted?
Okay, so initially, it took us time to kind of figure out what's exactly happening, because everybody was shocked kind of this starting. So, between, guidelines and, kind of procedure, how we can, deal with the patient that we're going to get, that by itself was a challenge. Every day there are new guidelines. Today you wear only regular mask, tomorrow you wear, kind of a 95 mask. It's kind of like different. There was initially even there was a controversy initially about were you wearing a mask outside or not, all this thing.
Exactly.
Then once the COVID started, it was kind of like, the numbers of the ER initially went down with people coming because, nobody want to come to the ER to be sick. But it was like, like people come to the ER only when they're thinking that they maybe have COVID-19. And initially, the numbers were not that big, the infection kind of growing up. So it took us at least till the 8 months of this pandemic. So maybe by June or July, August, around that time, it's 2020, when people actually the numbers started climbing up again. Because people kind of got used to the idea that there's a pandemic and when they can go to the ER and if they're going to get it or not, all this after a while. And initially, the number of the patients were not as bad as now. So the initial hit was not that bad initially till, we started the first wave. The holiday season is our biggest challenge every year, whether last year or this year. So
really?
People gather in the holidays, winter or around the summertime, people just outside, and there's no kind of infection. It's not that contagious when you're outside in the open air. But when you're inside and cold and everybody's around each other, that's when it actually get the infection everywhere. So you can say that the first the first 1 year, it always the challenge was always toward the end of the year, we're talking the holiday. That's when you start actually seeing this.
So you see like November, so Thanksgiving of 2020.
Yes, Thanksgiving 2020 was maybe the first challenge, and after that it just started kind of getting worse. Got better a little bit at the beginning of the year. There was the vaccine. Then again, now it's getting worse. Kind of like you can say that usually it's like a cycle. So around the beginning of the year, there's always some reason for us to be optimistic. Then the holiday hits and we change. Kind of the plan change.
How many patients did you see, let's say November of 2020 and December 2020 versus summer of 2020?
Versus now?
Or versus now?
We're talking about COVID-19 patient, kind of like doubled, if not tripled, the number that I saw the last year. Because last year we were testing. Okay, out of 10 people, you maybe get 3 people positive. Now out of 10, I get 9 positive. So
wow.
That's how high it is. So and as I said, it's not only that. So the procedure of testing is changing. Initially at the beginning of the pandemic, testing by itself was challenging because people get tested. At the beginning of the pandemic, there were no places to get tested first. Then there was one place that you get tested, but it takes 7 to 10 days to get the result back. Then we're not testing anybody unless they have exposure. Then we're not testing anybody. We're testing everybody, whether they're exposed or not. Whoever asks for the test usually give it the test. Then we're not testing only the people that have symptoms. Then we're not testing even the people that have symptoms, only the very sick patients. So right now, this is what the level we are in. Like
so they kept changing it on you, like every month, every 2 months?
Every couple, like we're talking about it is 3-4 months. It's not like every month, but 3-4 months we're switching something new.
Wow.
So right now, every time it's challenging to kind of the guideline changes. What exactly? So, and it's not only the guideline, is the staffing. We have the capability of testing people. We have the capability of seeing people. There's a lot of things that changes.
What were some of the patients you saw? The original patients back in November and December. Did you see anyone that came in that you had to have ventilators to or anything like that?
No, there's always people that need. Like right now, we are kind of like the same thing. Like the percentage of people that need ventilators usually is not as high as described. The people the severely sick patient mostly are 2 out of 10, 2 out of 100. So yeah, we're getting a lot of people that are positive, but we're not like getting people that actually severely sick. So,
and how was that back in last year, November, December of 2020? How was that the same percentage, 2 out of 100?
No, it's kind of like the percentage of people that are kind of with the severe symptoms is more, because I think the number of patients is more.
Oh.
I don't think the percentage of sick patient compared to the whole patient that getting sick. Because when you count 2 out of 100, you're counting 2 out of 100 people that kind of infected. So it's not like right now. I still see people that are kind of need to be in the hospital setting, like inpatient setting, but still not. It's kind of more than the other, but the number of people that are mildly symptomatic is way more than the number of people that need to be admitted.
Okay, and how many deaths do you see now versus before? Same percentage?
That's usually the thing. I work in the ER, so I cannot actually kind of complain and say about anything about that, because most of the patients that we get are actually, they say they get admitted. We usually don't get like an arrest secondary to like.
That's right. Okay.
So that usually is a kind of like an inpatient ICU situation, not
the
ER situation. Unless the coroner can figure out a few weeks later that this patient maybe was positive, but that's not something that kind of the ER will be kind of added to.
Did you had to change over your ER to COVID only sections of the ER, or what did you have to do?
We were initially we were thinking about that, but with the challenge that right now everybody could get exposed. You could see someone who have a shoulder dislocation and you're X-raying their shoulder, and all of a sudden you see that bit COVID positive. Because the X-ray look like that, like there's pneumonia. Although they don't feel the symptoms themselves, but if they have it. So it's kind of hard to kind of divide the ER. So now with everybody, we kind of of course, the COVID, anything that could be COVID, usually they isolate it. They have, they put a sign on the door, all this thing. Anything that even close to be kind of can be positive. But with time, with time, the ER is usually kind of getting more every room in the ER anyway get closed and private anyway. Okay.
So it's, I know in nursing homes, sometimes they set aside different wings for COVID positive patients. So you don't have that situation at St. Vincent.
That only a section only for COVID positive.
Yeah, not at the ER, not on the ER level though.
No, I don't think. No, usually, as I said, that all the rooms in the ER usually are private anyways, whether it's positive or not. So we're kind of treating everybody that it could be positive. Nobody's supposed to visit. Nobody's kind of, other than the patient themselves, or maybe like a direct family if they need some special needs. But they all have the door closed. They all kind of wear masks. Kind of treating everybody almost that they could be positive.
Okay, I see now. When you're looking at the number of people now versus last year, Is the fear the same in your patients coming in, or is it changed? Is it worse now, better now?
I mean, like the fear that they could be positive?
The fear that they could be get really sick, or the fear they can get it. I mean, what is the? I mean, when people come to an ER, they're usually nervous. They're usually scared anyways because they know what's going to happen to them. Has that gotten worse with COVID back in January of 2020, or is it the same?
No, honestly, the people kind of got tired of COVID. You know, right now they mostly have someone in their family had COVID that they lived it, or maybe they kind of have a worse kind of than that experience. But you know, like you wouldn't say like people, you know, there's people getting tired of COVID-19 infection by itself, even like if they're in the family. So even if you tell someone they're COVID positive, it's not as scary as it used to be last year.
And what is your protocol when you see someone, when someone comes in for something other than COVID? You must test them, right?
Yeah, we test anybody who needs to be admitted.
Okay. And when you test them and they come up, they end up being COVID, and what's the procedure for them at that point?
Now, every hospital is different, but in our hospital, we only limit COVID to one floor, and that's it. So kind of, because they have to be in a negative pressure room and they have to have a filter in the room. So it's kind of special rooms. So anybody who's test positive, even if they're coming for like anything that's not related to anything, like the COVID itself, which they end up in the same kind of precaution.
Okay.
That's what it ended up with. So that's why we always have limited number of COVID beds in the hospital.
And they can't leave when they're COVID negative? I mean, when they're COVID positive, or what's the procedure for that?
You mean like leave
the hospital? Yeah, if they came in for the ER and they got treated, and they were COVID positive.
Most of the time they come positive and they mild symptoms, they just get discharged and they go home with a precaution when to come back. Like if anything, we tell them kind of like, if you get worse, if anything happens, breathing is, if you're worried about anything at any time, come back to the ER. Because, they have to be, it's not enough that we kind of care for the patient, they also have to be our eyes and themselves. That like, they have to, if they have a family with them that live in the same house, they have to be kind of, we give them the precaution how to deal with isolation as possible. Like if you kind of have a room, just stay in that room, keep everybody else in that room, in the other room, try to wear your mask inside, all those things. And we tell them kind of like, if anything gets worse regarding your breathing. Now, if we are capable, usually we tell them that we get them like a prescription for a pulse ox to keep it in their finger if they're like elderly or something, to keep measuring their oxygenation. If they below a certain number, which is usually 94, come back to the ER, all these concerns.
How do you feel when you compare your hospital and who you serve to other hospitals? And we mentioned before about transportation and how they come to your hospital and how they leave your hospital. How's that impacted by the COVID?
Now, as I said, we kind of like, as I said, in our hospital, it's very challenging to kind of deal with that. We try our best, and hopefully we're doing a good job in that, trying to get them, kind of whenever someone positive, we try to kind of get them kind of a mode transportation that doesn't infect anybody around, or kind of like sometimes most of our patients come with the bus, and a lot of the time, as I said, if they're positive, we kind of have to figure out how they're gonna get home without putting them in the bus. That's for sure. So a lot of the time it's challenging how to deal with that, but hopefully we try our best. Our hospitals send us, it's like a charity hospital, so a lot of the time we run out of resources, but we try our best to kind of cover everybody to kind of go home safely and not infect everybody around. The same thing goes with people with the homeless shelter. Anybody who's positive, we always try to figure out where they're going to go. Are they not going to go to the homeless shelter and infect everybody else? The same thing. So we kind of like try to approach that to the whole community. After all, the hospital trying to kind of serve the community.
That's something that's an amazing attribute you have to have, because it's not just treat them here, it's how they're going to get home and not infect everybody. And I'm sure that people don't think about that when it comes to an ER or comes to a hospital.
Exactly. Like this, because a lot of the time, like I said, it's not. Most of the time, you have to ask them how they came here, how they're gonna get home. Like I know that when they come by that private car, the percentage of people come in private car in our hospital is very minimal. Most of the time, they got dropped by someone or the bus brought in here. It is a lot. The way way that the hospital made it, just as I said before, we just kind of like depend on the bus a lot of the time. The patients will be coming like in groups, not because they're coming together, not because they came in the same bus. And,
Yeah.
if you look at the ER of St. Vincent, just in front of it, there's a bus station.
Yes.
Back and forth. So usually the people come, kind of come with the same bus, they cross the street, come to the ER. A lot of the time, they have, they like we discharge them, they cross to the bus station and they get into the bus again. So it's kind of, as I said, we deal with a lot of vulnerable patients, and that's usually very challenging.
It has to be. It's something I never thought about, is that when you leave the ER, how do you leave the ER? When it comes to a communicable disease like COVID, you can't just send them home. They're gonna.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't want them to go outside and wait in the waiting for I don't know how hours to someone to come up. You need to figure out that they're gonna get out of the ER right away, not gonna go infect the people around them. There's a lot to say about kind of dealing with these kind of challenge.
Exactly. Now, how about when it comes to staffing? I mean, how many people have you lost staffing wise back in not permanently, but time wise? The first wave versus now, is it worse, better, the same?
Yeah, it's worse, but for sure, it's worse, way worse. Like there's a lot of people that got out of the ER. Like we still like last year we did lose kind of few people. Usually you lose them at least for 2 weeks or 10 days to be off until they come back. We're feeling better, hopefully. So a lot of the time, you kind of staffing wise, you lose more than one person at the same time, especially in the ER that limited number of nurses to begin with. We're not that big hospital in St. Vincent, so usually the number of nurses limited to begin with. Like if someone just call off because they kind of got they're sick and they need to be tested for corona, that by itself is a challenge. Who's going to cover their shift? But right now it's kind of worse because we're getting like more than one call. It's almost as I said, like double the number of people that called off or maybe got sick last year.
So the staffing has gotten worse, and the case, the number of
people the number of people that infected got worse, got more, and the people that retired. It's a lot of limitation now.
Wow, it's got to be. How do you, as an ER physician, try to stay positive when you see all these things happening? I mean, it's amazing to me. How do you do that?
No, you just, it's an emergency room, so you have to deal with that. You have to adapt to whatever changes so that you can deliver the care as much as you can. So, and St. Vincent, we're good in adaptation to these things. We kind of get very crafty. There's a lot of time that you can try, not only me, like even the other ER doctor in the same ER in St. Vincent, they all kind of help the nurses sometimes. As much as possible, they kind of get an IV, put their blood. There's a lot of things that you would do in the ER here that I don't think in another ER the doctor actually do it.
I think you're right. Where do you get your strength mentally and physically to keep going with this? I mean, there's got to be some inner strength that you can tap into, because I would think that going through the first time was difficult, but now it's even worse. And how do you draw on what strength do you draw on to try to get you through the day sometimes?
I don't know. That's a good question, actually. I never asked myself that. But, it's all about medicine after all. This is the job that we picked up. And it's not, medicine is not only a job, it's who we are. No matter what you try to do, you just try your best to kind of get to the safe side. You can try to get through that shift, to go through your patient, through everything, so that they kind of live and get get the proper care. So I think you just have to do what you have to do, I guess.
Yes, but I will say this: that's a great saying, but compared to many other professions, that goes far and beyond what most people have to think about. And I admire anybody, including yourself, in that position that has to do that, because everybody has to find strength somewhere. I'll put it in terms of energy. You have to refill your energy because you're giving it away on a daily basis, whether it's helping somebody else out or helping out a patient. and they have to find a way to refill that energy up to go back to work the next day, because some people just don't. But you seem to do that, and it's an amazing, I don't want to say philosophy, but it's an amazing thing that you're doing, given the conditions. You weren't taught. Were you? No, I'm on the phone. You weren't taught any of this, our pandemic reactions when you're in med school, were you?
No, nobody told us that there's going to be a pandemic.
I know, that's what I was going to say. My son was
Nobody told us there's going to be a pandemic, and there's going to be like no nurses. There's going to be maybe no doctors, and it's just, it's amazing. For the last, I think, 2 years and a half, you just have to cover whoever sick at any moment there is. Like you'll be like sitting, and all of a sudden, X and X cannot get work today, so it's someone that has to cover. So we kind of like change the plan. I think last year at the same time, around January, I took my kind of like 7 days off or something. I ended up called back to work. The same thing this year. I think, I'm not sure I'm not going to call me back or not, but we were limited when we need to know that we have to deal with the pandemic till it's over, so we have to kind of cover ourselves.
Wow.
But like you said, it's what keeps us going. I think we're making a difference. So I think that's what keep us going. Of course, we take our breaks when we get away from the ER and come back, and you get back to the new energy for a new day. But I know it's a kind of like nobody told us that this is going to be like the pandemic, how you can deal with it in med school. But it is a different time. It's a unique time. I think if you can actually show your strength, it has to be in that different time. You can't just expect that this is not going to be a unique experience. This is a unique experience right now. So you can, couple years later, hopefully, we'll tell people around what we did in the pandemic. So
exactly,
that's what we have to kind of do it right.
There's no chapter in the syllabus that said, on day 15 we're going to discuss the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing that happened like that.
I don't think it came up.
We just kind of like get through this. Hopefully, as I said, we were just dealing with it a day at a time. So I think every time we kind of have, initially there was no mask, then there was no, like right now there's no staff. Every year there's a different challenge. So
have you had COVID? Have you had COVID yourself?
Not diagnosed. No, I never been diagnosed, but I get sick every now and then, like with kind of those mild symptoms. I never got the fever and shortness of breath that people usually diagnosed with. So I'm not sure. I never had COVID. No.
Okay. My son said that he thought he might have had it, but wasn't sure. This was back in March or April of 20.
The problem is that we deal with a lot of positive patients, like a lot, like good. Like I remember one day I just swabbed myself 35 patients just because they have symptoms, and a lot of them cough in your face or whatever.
Yeah.
And you get kind of paranoid about things. One day you'll be like, no, you didn't know. Maybe that after all, we all vaccinated in the ER, the staff and nurses. So usually, if you vaccinated, the rule is that you kind of get the mild symptoms. It could be that runny nose that you get. That's COVID that you were dealing with, or something like that. So you get paranoid about stuff like this because if you vaccinated, usually most of the 99% of the time you're not getting any severe symptoms. It's going to be mild. You might not even just get it. You might get it, but not get any symptoms at all. So it's kind of hard to tell if you're not getting a very mild symptoms or not getting symptoms at all. That's going to be like very challenging to tell if you had it or not. But thankfully, it's been 2 years and I didn't get it. No.
Thank goodness. Has anybody ever told you that they didn't know that you were a physician, that didn't think that the pandemic was real?
Yeah, there's a lot of people. Actually, a lot of people, even in the medical field, actually, they will be like, "Oh, it's not real." It's people believe. A lot of the time, we believe what we want to believe. So a lot of the time, it might affect your work, might affect your business, and people will be like, "No, I'm not believing this." Until someone that dies in the family in front of you because we asked for COVID, and then they will believe in it. But this is the problem that. We have two kind of people in this earth, people that actually learn from their own mistake and people that just kind of try to learn from people around them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, of people like to learn from their own mistake, which is stupid, but
I agree. It's being in the ER, since you don't see people after you admit them. Has anybody ever come back to you in the past year and shared with you their thankfulness, their gratitude towards you, and how you treated them, whether it's COVID or not? Because usually you don't see that, because you treat them and you're on to the next, and you don't go through rounds and see them when they're admitted. So do you have that opportunity for people to thank you for your work, patience?
it happens. Yeah, it happened. Not in COVID time. It happened before, like in a lot of other places that I'll meet them somewhere and they will know that who I am and they'll tell me like, thank you, which is, make your day that you did something right.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, people, when someone do something right, most of the time people actually recognize that, so which is a good thing.
I'm glad for that, because when you don't discharge them, you just treat them, and either they get admitted or not, and then you don't know how well they did. Yeah, exactly. I get worried sometimes that I want to know what exactly happened. Are they better or whatever? So a lot of the time I do sometime a follow-up calls every now and then, like someone like a couple of days later, to make sure that they're fine, because especially in the COVID time, right now, Mm-hmm.
you don't know what happened after you discharged. Did they get worse? Especially elderly people.
Exactly.
Themselves. And a lot of the time you have to just go back and make sure, just not only for the patient, for your own subconscious, that they actually okay. It's okay, they're fine. So that's usually that's one of the good things that you will be rewarding yourself, that that they're better. That
has to be a good thing, that your efforts were worth it, and they were so thankful for that. Because a doctor doing the rounds can see them getting better or not. But in your case, you just treat them and send them someplace, either to home or admitted.
Yeah, exactly. Like you send them, we would be worried that they kind of got worse and went somewhere else. That's when you'll be like, thinking about it most of the day. But as I said, a lot of the time I've been working in the same ER for I've been in that hospital for 8 years. So a lot of those people, I know them by name. And I know if I treated something, I can see them like a few months later. I can see the wound that I stitched in or something like that, and I see that it's healed well.
Oh, fantastic!
So that I would be seeing it for something else, but they would tell me that whatever happened the last time I saw them. So it's kind of nice. It's good to have, and in our hospital in St. Vincent, that's a good thing about it. That we all even most of the patients, we mostly know them. That's great to hear. What would you like to have the artist who's listening to your story? What would you like them to come away with from your experience with COVID in the last 2 years? I don't know. I would like them to see it that, it's kind of that COVID is scary and not scary at the same time. It's scary. Living in the pandemic is kind of scary and not scary at the same time. As I said, it's just, and the problem that keeps changing, and that by itself is scary because, we never it seems to us like there's no light at the end of the tunnel a lot of the time, but what I would like them to know that maybe it's messy now, but I think it's that, there'll be light at the end of the tunnel. We'll go back to normal eventually. Do you think it'll become just a regular, a new flu strain that we have to get shots for every year? It could happen, yeah. It could happen, especially that we kind of as I said, Omicron right now is weaker, although it's more it's kind of contagious more, but it's way weaker than the regular COVID. Mm-hmm. So right now, it's not getting people admitted not as much as the Omicron. Most of the Omicron are mild symptoms. So I think hopefully we're getting the virus weaker and weaker, hopefully. In my experience, I'm not a medicine person at all, but I've looked at diseases as I taught chemistry and biochemistry for years. And I've realized that usually when you have an epidemic or a pandemic, that the virus, as it becomes more mutated, becomes weaker because it becomes more dilute. And I think that's what's happening now. I've seen that in previous years when I look back in the history, that the first strain of it is very deadly. But as the public becomes adapted to it, and as it becomes different mutations, it becomes less and less strong. So I think it was I think we're seeing the end of it now.
with the Omicron because of that. Do you think so?
Hopefully, I'm hoping for that. I'm not sure. It's kind of definitely different than anything else. And it's kind of hard to predict what is it exactly. You don't want to we know that we are hopeful, we're mostly hopeful, but we know there's a lot of, kind of, if you're going to look in the past scenario, there's a lot of things that happened in like the flu pandemic in 1915. There's a lot of things that happened that before that we're not sure. Are we similar to that or not? There's a pandemic that continued for 2 years. I don't know this pandemic, how long it's going to continue. It's been 2 years already. So it's kind of really hard to expect that this is like a new area. It's hard to know what exactly.
I agree 100%. I'm excited in a way to say I lived through it, but also I'm also very upset that I lived through it because my grandmother lived through it, and it's I guess what I wish would happen is I wish it would be such a time would fly by so fast that I could look back on it with a historical perspective rather than still living it. And that's what's the problem right now with us still living it, even though I'm
exactly. Like if you wanna tell people that I lived through this, but you don't wanna you want it to be ended up so you can't say that sentence.
Exactly.
We all are living the same nightmare anyway. So
I want to use the past tense, not the present tense. I'm not living through it, I lived through it. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like we've been through a lot through this pandemic, whatever generation living this, it's not something like any other generation before us that lived it. So hopefully it is, kind of like hopefully it will be over, and we'll be talking about the time that we have to kind of run for toilet paper and all this thing that we did for the pandemic, but hopefully it will be over soon.
One of the things that I looked at way back in, let's say in March, April last year, was that this country is so used to getting things quickly. We get over things quickly. We're through with it. Whatever kind of tragedy happens, we're over it and we're on to the next thing. But we can't do it with this. It just still hangs around, and it's forcing us to address something on a long-term situation versus getting, it's because usually, when it comes to our news items and our news cycles, after 3 days, you're done with it. It's old news. This is not.
Every day there's something new. Every day there's something, and the problem with that, I think it's just it's not to be over all over the world. It doesn't have to be like if it's over in one country, that's not going to be enough. We have to end up. It doesn't have to end up everywhere at the same time.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, if one of the countries is not vaccinated, they're going to keep getting up with a new virus and new kind of strain, and that will get everywhere. We live in the same planet, and we kind of not far away from each other right now. Everything can get through within hours. It will be another country anyway.
Exactly.
So this is the thing. We have to kind of pull the whole plan. We have to pull our act together. Otherwise, it's not gonna be over.
We have to act together as a human race, not just as a country.
Yeah, exactly. Like this Omicron, in South Africa, last month, what we have is here now everywhere.
Exactly.
So the same thing, like this, the coronavirus started in China, which I never been there before. At 2 years ago, it's everywhere here. Nobody got out of the country. It just kind of it gets everywhere. So we have to kind of. I know that everybody every country think that it's different than the other country, but I think they just have to. We kind of have to see our similarities. That right now, this pandemic made us know that we are actually very similar to each other, and we have to and we are the same exactly. So we just have to kind of deal with it together. Otherwise, nobody's gonna get any solution. You can get vaccinated, the whole country could get vaccinated, but if someone get out of the country, come back, and bring something new, that's it.
We're so used to pointing fingers when it comes to something bad happening. We can't do it this time. We can't point fingers at a virus because we can't see it. And it won't be.
You can't point fingers. This thing is just the virus by itself. Nobody even know how it starts. So there's no time to point finger. Just we all on the same ship together. We're gonna if this is gonna drown, everybody will drown together. So we're gonna just have to kind of deal with the fact that it's there and just solve it together. Like even the other countries that didn't have vaccinated, we have to kind of get vaccinated so that the virus doesn't get everywhere.
Exactly.
Because, usually you're not supposed to be transmitting the virus if you actually vaccinated. So that's why people need to get vaccinated, so they don't actually get the virus and transmit. And that's how it ends. But other than this, we're just going to keep getting this over and over.
I agree. Dr. Diab, I appreciate your time so very much, and your insight and your work and your attitude and your characteristics of helping people is just amazing to me. It's so amazing to me. And
thank you.
I don't know where you get your strength from, but I hope you never lose it.
Let me tell you this very short story. I'm a Palestinian refugee initially. I'm American right now, but I'm a Palestinian refugee. And when I started medicine, I started in Lebanon. I was a refugee there, and people are not allowed to work there unless they actually are citizens of the country. So I had to leave once I studied medicine, and how I ended up here. And I'm thankful. I mean, I'm a U.S. citizen now, and I'm proud to be from Cleveland. And I've been to the same hospital since I came here because it's my family, and we don't want to change it. So yeah, I think that's what keeps us going. That's your family. You can't just leave it.
I'm so glad you chose Cleveland.
No, I love it. I don't know. That's my family. I can, you might not like your family all the time, but still.
It's family. I agree with you. Dr. Diab, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I'll keep you posted as we progress through, and I'll let you know when the art will be ready to be unveiled, sometime in May, okay?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.